Hi everyone. Okay, I'm gonna interrupt the Fischer series once again to show you another of my own games, as some of you were asking how this one went. It was played on Monday at the Smith-Morra Chess Club in Dublin. My opponent was Jack Killane, who's fairly well known on the Irish circuit and the highest rated player in this tournament that I'm playing in. At his peak, he was close to 2200 FIDE, but these days he's closer to 2100, although he retains his reputation for sharp play. He's the strongest person I've ever played in tournament conditions in any case, and it was the first time in my life when I was able to do some home preparation, as he has many games online. I analysed several of them with Fritz to see if I could find any weaknesses, but didn't find many. I noted that he almost always castled kingside and played f4 in the Sicilian though, which is what I was mostly prepared for, and I turned up 15 minutes late for the game, so I was already at a disadvantage. To get into the game anyway, he had the white pieces and opened with e4. So I played the Sicilian, because I've gone off the French recently since that bad defeat I had a few weeks back. And he answered with d4, and I knew immediately he was going into the Smith-Morra Gambit because about half of his online games in the Sicilian featured it, and it was another approach that I'd anticipated when I was looking at his games. It's a gambit I've used myself a lot in the past, and I know the lines well, so I was more than glad to accept the pawn after c takes d4, c3, and d takes c3. And he continued with the main line, knight takes c3. So, as compensation for the pawn, he has a lead in development, now being 2 moves ahead, and it's fairly easy for him to neutralize the typical c-file pressure common in the Sicilian setups, because the c-file is now completely open, and also his development is free and easy, and often white will get good attacking chances early in the game. I don't mind accepting gambit pawns and defending for a while to go into a winning endgame, so I was more than happy to try that here. And I continued development with knight c6, and he played bishop c4, which is normal for this opening, with immediate pressure on f7 that I blunted right away with e6, although this creates a hole at d6, and I have to be careful that he doesn't get a knight there quickly, or I'll have to trade off my dark squared bishop for it, and give him a powerful bishop pair, especially considering my central pawns are on light squares. So he played knight f3, and I played d6, just taking measures against knight landing there, and also so I can play knight f6 without him being able to play e5. And just making sure he doesn't play e5 in general to hinder my development. And yeah, and so allowing me to play knight f6 next after he castled, and I played knight f6. And this was the last book move of the game, because here he played bishop b3, presumably so I couldn't chase the bishop about with knight a5, forcing it off this good diagonal. But more consistent with the opening is queen e2, preparing rook d1 and e5, which is thematic for this gambit. By moving his bishop again instead, he allows me to get castled before he can carry out this maneuver with bishop b3. So I played bishop e7, and now he played queen e2, preparing rook d1. So I castled, and he played rook d1, again with the threat of playing e5. And it's a good move, rook d1, because it takes control of one of white's assets in the Sicilian, this d-file, and brings pressure to bear on my most obvious weakness, the d6 pawn here. So now I have to contend with the threat of e5, and I thought that queen a5 was a logical way to go about it, because this moves the queen away from where the rook is eyeing her on d8, so it takes away those tactical threats, and it also prevents him from playing e5, because I can simply take it, as I've got 3 pieces controlling it, my pawn, my knight, and my queen, as opposed to him. He's only got 2 pieces controlling it, his knight and his queen, so I just take. And also I can swing the queen over to the king side, here to h5, to get a good attacking post if he tries something like bishop d2 on his next move here with tactics in mind. And h5 will be a safe square for my queen, at least temporarily. And if he tries to, set up a trap with his minor pieces, maybe by moving his rook and with bishop d1, I'll have time to take action against that, because it's going to take him a few moves to do. So that's not a worry either. And bishop f4 is how we continued, which is a logical move because it adds more pressure to d6 and it makes e5 playable again to gain space, because now he's got another piece attacking it. And I'd anticipated this move and played rook d8, which relieves some of his d-file pressure. And I didn't want to play e5, of course, because now I have this gaping hole at d5, which is going to be perfect for his pieces. He's almost trying to provoke it, and he has these pieces just lined up, ready to use d5. It'd be a perfect square, for the rest of the game. It would be a brilliant square for his pieces. And black has to be careful about playing e5 in Sicilians in general, and use good judgment about whether the space gained and the central control compensates for the bad d5 weakness. In my opinion, it's best to delay it until it's either completely safe or absolutely necessary, considering the overall position. So rook d8, anyway, that's what I played, and he played rook ac1, which is taking control of the open c-file, which is a good move. And now all of white's pieces are on good squares and involved in the game. And I'm still a bit behind in development, but it's okay for now. He has no direct attacking threats. Fritz gives him a small amount of positional compensation for the pawn, about 0.4, and in a post-mortem he said he felt he had nothing at all for the sacrificed pawn. And it's easy to see why in this position, he's got nothing. I think that bishop b3 move really took the sting out of the early initiative that white can get in the Smith-Morra Gambit. And yeah, one of my ideas about playing at queen a5 is that it's going to support a later bishop a6, which I thought would be a good square for the bishop, seeing as he's committed his light square bishop to this diagonal and to the queen side. Along these diagonals, this is going to be a strong diagonal for my bishop, and it's also going to be a move that's played with tempo because it's going to attack the queen here on e2. So I played b6 to facilitate that, and also with ideas about bringing the bishop to b7 later for pressure on e4, which is what a lot of blacks play is based around commonly in Sicilian, is the pawn here on e4. And also from b7, if this pawn is taken or ever moves, there's going to be good pressure on the white king. And the risk with this move, b6, is that my knight on c6 is now loose and facing the rook on c1. But I can see no tactical risk because I've got bishop a6 next with tempo, after which I can play rook ac8, supporting the knight and challenging white's c-file control. So I wasn't too worried about that. And bishop g3 is how we continued. And the bishop was his only undefended piece, and so a tactical target in some lines. And now his position is pretty solid, and he has good central control, but I'm not far behind in development, and he still has little to show for the gambited pawn. I continued with my plan, bishop a6, not concerned with bishop c4, because now I would simply play bishop takes c4. And after queen takes c4, rook a c8 with a good advantage. Exchanges favour me as I'm ahead in material. And here effectively I have the initiative too, because of the tactics behind the discovered attack on his queen. For example, knight e5, or anyway, any knight move is good. So, unsurprisingly he didn't go down this line. And after I played bishop a6, he played queen d2. I played rook ac8, which is the continuation of my plan. And now I have a hedgehog type setup, where my pieces able to rearrange themselves behind this pawn structure. And I was happy with this position, and Fritz agrees now that I'm starting to get a positional as well as material advantage overall. And one idea here is to play knight b4 to d3, gaining a very well posted knight with tempo due to the attack on the rook at c1. He was worried enough about this to play the prophylactic a3, So now I swung my queen over to the attack with queen h5, threatening knight g4, e5, and again if there's any exchanges on e5 they'll favour me because I'm ahead in material. So now he played h3 to stop that plan. Okay, that's the end of part 1.